anyone has a more reliable way of pinging him.
Yeah, I've got it in Slack, but we'll see.
I feel like we kind of know what his position is, and we're basically gonna like take that direction anyway. So.
Oh, Ben was going to try and make it. Hold on.
Yeah, get Trevor here just so we can tell him, yes, you were right.
I think it's like midnight for Ben, so I wouldn't be surprised if he just went to bed.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure we will get Trevor. I think it's actually meal time in that house, and he might be.
It's only like 2 or 3 p.m. for him.
He's in Central, I think it is.
That's 4.
Oh, so that's 4
I know silly people who eat at 4, so.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't be.
Utah's in Central Time? I thought Utah was in Mountain Time.
I thought it was in Mountain Time too, but.
I'm just guessing, so.
Okay, make it 3.
Yeah, I think it's 3 p.m. for him.
Okay. Well, let's just move on. So I think everyone's up to speed with the proposal. I don't know if we've got any major dissenters here on this call. Does anyone have a good entry point into this discussion? Like, I can't remember where we left off, where it was getting difficult to discuss before.
Well, no, I mean, I think that we're like the more that I think about it, the more that it'll probably work. I think that it's going to be a lot of extra work on the release engineers each week because they're going to be the ones who end up doing this cherry picking, at least at first. But I think that it can work and that we can get it rolling pretty quickly. I don't see any huge problems with it really anymore.
Are you sure the release engineers for this stable branch are going to be doing it? Like, I still don't see like why the majority of them wouldn't just be done by the people who land those things.
Well, because a lot of people land changes, and not all of them even like know that this is happening or that this process is changing.
Okay.
And
Okay,
we
so
also
a little bit, yeah, but
we also don't want to increase the
No,
barrier
perfect.
to getting code in, right? So like
Right.
new contributors and onboarding people, we don't want to make that like really difficult for them.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, for practical reasons, like we end up finding bugs in these patches when we do the releases anyway. Another thing that I was thinking about is that if we start doing releases we already do releases like pretty much every week. If we make that sort of a standard policy, it makes a lot of sense to just build an alpha release first, because then all of the code that you're about to cherry pick goes into it, and then you'll find any kind of problems or anything that you need to back out on master, and then cherry pick over into stable and then do a stable release. So we'll get like a lot more alpha releases, I think.
I really
nice.
don't want to cherry pick and then do a release. Like, that doesn't seem like a good idea, trying to do it all in one shot. I feel that that's a good way to like either get the releases really held up or run into weird things while you're trying to do a release and then it gets really held up. Just generally. I mean, it might need to be that for a short term, but we still have like a buffer period until 3.0 hits anyway, and then we can switch over. So
I tend to agree that we don't want to pile this stuff up, but my opinion is that we just need that to be a role on the project to cherry pick things up, because somebody's got to do it, and it's hard to actually like socialize that across all the collaborators.
Yeah,
The real problem is going to be in when you get out to the branches that are going to be very disconnected from master. Cherry picking is going to start to be really difficult, and it's going to take a bit of expertise and deep knowledge about what's going on. Like even now, the changes
right, but
between...
that's probably mostly going to be LTS, right? Because that's going to be the only one that we're going to actively cherry pick to that's like actually that disconnected. I feel
Not
anyways.
necessarily, because we already have that trouble now with master and next. Then, like, it's only how long's it been? A few months?
But we won't have that anymore, right? Like that's what we're saying.
No, but we will, because next will be like our master, and the master we have now will be like our stable release. And if we,
Right,
if
but,
you've
but
been-
we're pulling.
What's changed enough that we can't backport though?
So-
It couldn't be backported easily. Like buffer changes, sure. But there's people who know very well how buffer used to work or does work currently. So
I can see us in the future like V8 could decide to change things again as they're sort of want to do, and then we get into a situation where we have a bunch of patches on master that will be kind of difficult to cherry pick up to a stable, even like disregarding LTS entirely. Like there'll just be work that has to be done to make the like the square peg of V8 version A fit into the round hole of V8 version B.
right, and like keep in mind if we absolutely can't backport things, like if it just doesn't apply, then we don't apply it. We can't backport it. Like that's gonna end up being how it works. Because I'm sure there's buffer stuff that we're gonna do now that just we can't really backport because everything's changed.
Yeah, and I think in all reality though, like if somebody's sending a patch for a specific bug in a version of buffer, they're going to realize right away that the one in master isn't the one on stable, and they're probably just going to send us a patch to the other branch, right? I mean, if it's that different and they want to specifically be in that version, right?
Okay, at that point, does it matter? Because that's not going to be able to apply on master anyway. We're never going to be able to PR that onto master because it's not going to work.
No, I'm saying that's what we want, and that's why I don't think this is going to be such a huge issue on master.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think to the point about like the branches that get way out of line with master, like the LTS branches, the nice thing about that is that as they get farther away, like as the amount of time increases, our bar for what kinds of patches move over gets higher and higher. So we're not taking as many of those patches, right? Like we're not taking every little feature addition into things from a year ago. So.
Right. The only place I'd see us doing that is whichever the current stable is. Like we should try to merge as much in as possible, like I tried to do with 1.x, or at least as like an example.
And also, I don't think that we're going to get in the situation that we have right now with Next, because we're going to be doing this cherry pick from master to stable every week in order to get a release out, right? Like, it has to happen before a release happens. So if nobody's been doing it for a week and we want to get a release out, somebody's going to do it, right?
So, sorry, just for my own understanding here, the weekly release is off of the beta branch? Or is that off of, or like whatever master is at that point, or is that a weekly release of the latest stable?
Weekly release of the current stable. So in this case, 2.x.
Okay.
In the next case, 3.x. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the understanding is still to do like 6-weekish releases off of the next branch.
I don't. But why? Okay, like if we have to cut if we're going to do a release of stable and we're going to be cherry picking those patches from master to stable, why wouldn't we just kick off a master release like every week? I mean, if it is mostly automated, why don't we just have alpha releases every week?
Okay. The only thing with doing releases every week from master is it gets like it's already going to be tricky for us to version it. The only way we can realistically version this thing at this point is just to do a bunch of metadata. Which people are already not that happy about who want to use it. And the thing is, like, anything could break at any time.
That's kind of okay, though, because if it does break, the only way that we're going to find out about it is if it's in a release. I mean, like, I don't mind having 100 alphas in over 6 months.
Yeah, but people still want to use this and want it to be like, they can read the changelog of what breaks, and other than that, like, it's still going to be, like, reasonable for them to use it.
Well, if you wait 6 weeks, that changelog's going to be fucking huge, right? Because it's not just changes that are going in for the next release, it's all the changes that also land in stable, right? So the changelog is huge if you wait that long. So if the point is to have readable changelog in between releases, you actually do want to do them weekly.
Well, I'm not sure if it's like a readable changelog, but so just like a list of the breaking changes. So you already know it. I'm not even saying that we necessarily need that list. I'm just saying that like whatever lands in there needs to be still not breaking the entire ecosystem because people will still probably use it. Like if
Right.
there's something that's going to like majorly screw over stuff, like it still needs to be like flagged or whatever for.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to have the same process that we have now around both Next and Master for making sure that stuff doesn't land that totally breaks things. But I do think that we're going to have cases just like we had in like the 2.x release where we have some breaking changes that we thought were minor that ended up being actually like a lot bigger, and we didn't find out until we had a build. So there's going to be an alpha that breaks some stuff that we tell people about, and then we back it out and we go, actually, we're not going to do that. Sorry. I don't think that that's not going to continue to happen because there's certain things that we just don't know until we know.
So back when I was younger and had the patience for this kind of thing, I used to use the unstable version of Debian on my computer, and you'd do an upgrade, an update, like every few days, and just stuff would break constantly, and you'd be constantly fixing stuff. And I had the patience for that, and I kind of enjoyed being on the cutting edge of it. There's no way I'd do that these days, but I know young people particularly that do, and there will always be people that are willing to live on that edge and willing to fix stuff that breaks and go through that process. It's going to be painful, and they're either going to put up with it because they love getting the latest and the greatest, or they're going to get sick of it and move on. I think that's just how it's going to work.
I agree, and I think one side benefit of building out that community of people doing that is that they're going to start to depend very little on native modules, if at all. So they're going to like slowly bring a lot of the ecosystem that direction. And, like in particular, there's a couple native modules that have alternatives in pure JavaScript that are really common in the front end right now, and the front end community really wants all these new JS features. So if we start getting them taking these alpha releases, they're going to move all of that tooling off of native modules, which is going to help solve a lot of the ecosystem problems.
Yep, that would be an interesting side effect.
What exactly are you trying to say there, Chris? Because like, if we only for versioning the sort of dev or master, whatever we call releases that come off of that, the branch that we're putting like everything into, and so if we do like the first release of it, and then stuff breaks in the next release, what part of that version do we increment? We can't increment the major because that's going to screw up.
I mean, so like the two proposals have.
Yeah, but the thing is,
No.
if we increment that major, then if people are trying to check against majors, then there's going to be that major there, and then somewhere else down the line, there's going to be another major for when we actually cut that, and it's going to make no sense at all.
I mean, we can just call them alpha, right? Like that's what the build metadata is for, right? So you just call it alpha 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. And what people end up doing is that, like, if we come up with a code name for that, right, we can call it like, Iridium 25, and people are like, oh, rad, 25 landed with fat arrows, and people like get into it or whatever. And half of the time they don't give a shit. But then we get that major increment in the alpha range, and people just think of it in the alpha range until we have a new code name when we end up doing a major bump. Yeah,
so there were the two proposals for that. I didn't know that we had come down on either one of them. They're the Dominic side of bump majors on the master version. I mean, no matter what and the Trevor version where it's bump alpha on the master and then only increment the major once and only when merging into stable, cutting a stable. And I didn't know if we had landed on either side of that or.
I mean, I don't. I have.
With what you were saying.
Yeah. So sorry, Jeremiah. Damn delay. I keep going. Is he gonna talk about? I think Trevor's plan assumed Trevor's versioning scheme, and I don't know if Dominic's versioning scheme would actually work with this plan that we're talking about. I think that we kind of have to take those two things together.
I think it would kind of work, but it would get very confusing.
So I think the one rule is that only one branch can, across all of these proposals, is that only one of these release lines has control over the major version, and then and only each release line can have one major version at once, basically. So you end up with master has control of 2 right now, or sorry. Stable has control of 2 right now. Master or Beta next has control of 3, and LTS has control of 12 and 10 right now on the various like LTS maintained LTS maintenance or LTS stable LTS maintenance. But like they each have their like control over a single major, and that's how you keep the senders from bumping into each other.
In the LTS plan, we actually explicitly state that if there's a change that we have to put in, like the security fix that is actually a breaking change, then we would force it through as a minor version bump anyway. So that's possible.
Yeah, and I think just between the two, like I'm not sure that there's any the confusion that came out of bumping major continually on the beta channel was that it would obscure breaking changes. It would obscure Sunburr as it came down because we would have to pick, like we would merge a couple of patch things, a couple of minor things, and then a major thing would land on the beta branch and just erase all of that and have to bump major, and we would lose all that metadata immediately. So I didn't know if we have, so it sounds like we've come down on just an integer alpha number that increases over time.
Yeah. It could be a date-based one, like alpha dash or alpha dot, and then the date, the reverse date string, sortable. Yeah.
Well, one thing we really didn't get into with that whole versioning thing is that if we're dramatically increasing the major version number that way, we really don't have a good way to do deprecations in that we're saying however many major lines in between warning and actually removing something and that whole thing. So that's another sort of reason why we would not want to do that.
Also, it gets really confusing because 6 weeks doesn't fit into, like, we'll have years where we have one more, and the other years would be like one less than the previous year. It would like switch. So sometimes you get, I don't know what the exact number is. It would be like 7 version bumps, and then 6 version bumps, and then 7 and 6 and onwards. Because yeah.
Yep. The whole deprecation issue. It's something I think we need to spend a little bit more time on, because deprecating one feature might not have as much impact as deprecating another. And do we want to just have a single policy for all deprecations, or do we want to actually grade them somehow?
I think they should be case by case. I mean, I think our process should be determine extent of impact and then offer a plan for deprecation instead of a hard line like this is how we deprecate everything.
I think we should have like a policy to handle them case by case based on a couple things. Basically, yeah.
Right. And if we do that, then what we'd want is maybe like 2 ways of handling it. Say if we have a soft deprecation, which is it can happen in between LTS releases. Whenever a major bumps, we merge in after 6 months. That thing goes away. It's a minor thing. If we have a hard deprecation, that's something that would be that you'd have to wait 1 LTS cycle. So that's something that we know is going to have a much stronger impact. It has to wait until the following LTS before that can happen. I think if we broke it down that way, but handle each one case by case and categorize them somehow, I think.
Well, I think the current plan basically states that we don't even land it in master until we've like a real deprecation, not just a warned deprecation. We don't even land it there until the impact of it is really close to 0. Like we've actually gotten rid of most of the usage of that in the ecosystem. And then it would only land between majors, right? So then, and I think we already have in the plan too that there has to be a soft cycle warning for an entire major cycle before that. But the rest of the plan is kind of case by case because it might take longer. It may take way longer to get rid of certain usage of APIs rather than others. Like I think the last time that I checked, Chris, you were gonna try to deprecate sys, right? And you were gonna walk through the impact and do the whole plan. So I think that we're still planning to do that, right?
Yeah.
So basically, it's like, okay, so we think we might want to deprecate this. Then we go and look at the ecosystem can we even deprecate it? If we think we can, or think we can start, we do some doc stuff and then start messaging it, and then we keep checking, and eventually, if it gets to the point where like, oh, it's beneath this threshold, we can actually issue a deprecation and like notice in the code, so util.deprecate and then go from there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sys is a great one of these because we've been putting out warnings for the sys module being deprecated since like 0.4, but its usage has just been too wide still to get rid of. So this will be a really good test case, I think.
So, okay. So, understanding we have this process, and we're going to, do this kind of social engineering effort before we actually deprecate. Is there a risk of some major piece being deprecated right before an LTS is cut, and where right before is within 3 months? Could that kind of thing happen?
I don't think so, right? Because if we're doing these alpha releases pretty often, one of the ways that we'd want to check the impact is to put it out in that alpha cycle for a while, like. And we could even create in the policy some amount of time where it's in the alpha releases before it actually lands in a major.
And barring the first LTS, they will all be coming off a stable branch that has been out there for 6 months anyway.
Right.
So we've got a lead time anyway.
Okay. Okay, then I'm good with that. All right, sounds good.
So, Rod, you said that you still had a concern that some of the branches would be way out of line with master and that this would get really difficult. Do you still have that concern?
It's just going to be a fact of life. It's just about the difficulty of cherry picking things across, and it'd be like taking a bug fix in the current master and applying it to 0.10. Like that kind of thing is going to be there, but I think over time the LTS group will just be used to that, and we'll have a process for doing that.
I don't once you get to that level, I don't think either plan or any plan we have is really going to avoid that with just like how stuff is developed around this ecosystem.
Yeah, and it's all about process and getting used to it.
Well, also, one of the nice things here is that you can structure it so that you're not having every LTS branch cherry pick from master. What you're doing is that you're looking at every prior major release and using that as a filter for the things that you're even considering taking, right? So you're actually cherry picking. When you take an 0.10 fix, you're actually cherry picking it from the 0.12 LTS line. So you know that it made it through that. And then you're not going to take, a bunch of those because they're feature additions or whatever. You're only going to take the critical fixes. So there's a bit less work there. And if there was some kind of major change that had to be made for 0.12, that may be really close to the change that had to be made for 0.10 anyway.
So an idea I had was that, I can't remember where I mentioned this one, but if we have a tag for each active branch and we apply those tags to incoming changes, and the tag is like land on 4 or land on whatever the versions are, because I have major versions, and then we can easily develop tooling to walk through all of the pull requests, look at those tags, and make sure that they've landed where they're supposed to land before a release comes out. You can run this thing and say, has everything been landed here that was supposed to be? And that would alleviate some of the problem of even now of having changes that don't get propagated through. So just because we've missed them, the process hasn't picked up.
Also, you could put in the PR just some information from the tooling that says if it just applies cleanly or if it's going to take work.
Oh, that'd be interesting, yeah.
Okay, I think we're all agreed, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. Now, are we going? Do we imagine that we are going to be pulling in V8 as quickly as we can into master?
Yeah, I mean, why don't we just let's cut the 2.x branch now and then land all of the next changes and get rid of the next branch as soon as possible.
I think that might be a little bit confusing. We might want to spend a little bit of time messaging that to collaborators first. And maybe sort of do it and coincide with when we actually cut or release 3.0 then. I guess it might be better to do it soon, you're right.
Yeah. It makes that whole process a lot simpler, and we really don't want to tie this to the next major cycle, because then we allow it to get caught up. But because we have so many patches targeted at master that might not apply cleanly, maybe we should do a push like Monday, Tuesday to get PRs in, like as soon as possible.
I would say
the state of 3.0 is that as far as I'm concerned, it's pretty much code complete. The latest RCs have been, they could be releases, and it's just Nan and I have been working very hard on the documentation for that in the last couple of days. So we could actually push out a 3.0 anytime we wanted to. We can push it out now. It's just that we wouldn't have a Nan to match it. So we can move forward here.
I think that now that we're moving to this cycle where we're doing a bunch of alpha releases and we're messaging those, and we have this long cycle where you can test stuff out, it would be nice if we land all this in master and do that for a month or so, and just show everybody that there are these alpha releases for 3.0, use all your stuff, and we have this cycle of messaging before we're stamping it and pushing it off to into this, when we're saying 3.0 is now the current release, and moving on to what is essentially 4.x in the master branch.
Yeah, I think actually the sooner we do this, it's going to be easier for the Converge to release as well. So rather not push it off for too long. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in fact,
definitely
like
think, you know.
I mean, like, would it be okay? I think that we should have a Converge 2.x release. So we should apply all these changes from next into master, apply the convergence to master, cherry pick that into stable, and then do an alpha release of 3 and a stable release of 2 that are called Node.js that actually have all the converge stuff in them. That would be
what?
Called Node.js.
Called Node.js, yeah.
So that means we have to go and rebrand everything?
It was one commit the first time that we rebranded everything. It's probably going to be
one. It was. We're chasing up a lot of stuff.
Right. Well, I mean, so because it's only a minor release, we can't deprecate any API, and I would consider the IOJS binary to be API. So we actually should not do a release that doesn't have the IOJS binary in it for 2.x. Even if we're calling it
really
Node.js.
confusing. I don't really understand. Like, why do you want to do this? And
I would say not doing that for the 2x. I mean, I have no problem if we want to move forward on a 2x release that brings the 0.12 features in, but still calling it IOJS. If we do the 3.0 beta or alpha, whatever we want to call it, I have no problem doing the rebranding there. What we talked about was the Converge was going to be on the next major after IOJS, so that makes sense. But trying to do any kind of rebranding in the 2x stream just is not going to work.
wait, Michael, is this just like concern that we're gonna break everything because of V8 changes in 3.0?
No. It's just we just want to get this out as soon as possible, and if we end up going, well, actually, like, we want to wait a little bit longer for native modules to catch up, or actually this or that, like, we've found a lot of reasons to push out the next major, and I don't want to continue to hold up the convergence waiting for, quote-unquote, the next major.
I don't think it ever has really been.
No, so, okay, this is the way I see it. The 3.0 is coming out any day now, hopefully next week. And that has the biggest breakage, but it also carries NAN 2, which is forward compatible with Chrome V8 4.5. However, we're not going to have timing to bring in 4.5 anyway, because it's not going to be stable till September, but we want to get the new Converge stuff out before that. We're aiming for August, which is just around the corner. So my suggestion is that we get 3 out. It's going to have a little bit of life for people to start scrambling, updating their native modules, and then next month we get a Node version 4 out, which is bumping major, but not actually. And the breaking changes that it brings in really are just the feature additions for convergence. They're not. I don't think there's any true breaking changes there, but we're bumping major anyway to get for convergence.
So wait, hold on, I'm trying to back up a little bit. So in this plan, are we doing IOJS 3.0 alphas in the meantime, or is the first alpha release that we do of 3.0 going to be called Node.js and be converged?
We're already doing release candidates for 3.0.
Yeah, okay. So first off, all build metadata doesn't matter. Like, it all equals a totally incompatible same version according to Semver. So we can call them whatever we want. We don't have to back off from release candidates. And they haven't been release candidates, as you've said a couple times. They've been really unstable. Like
They
I
are
think
now. They are now. I've managed to get everything up to date. So the last two,
Okay.
4 and 5.
Okay. So, but we still don't there haven't been builds that are usable for people to actually use and update their modules yet. We know that it takes forever for people to both update their native modules and get all their depths and depths of depths to take them. So I don't think that we want to push out another current release where we haven't even given people builds where they can start updating for like a month or so ahead of time, right? Like, there hasn't really been any way for people to start this process until today. And if we're going to say, oh, well, we had release candidates, now we're going to call it stable, like that.
But we've never had that. There's never been a point at which we've had in non-current releases that people could use.
And so Node.js had like an entire year and a half of an 0.11 branch, right, where people could pull it down and try to get their stuff working with it. We've never had that in IOJS when we were bumping the major all the time, but the reason that we stopped doing that was because we were breaking all this stuff all the time, right?
Right. So given the user base of IOJS, it's quite small, and the kind of people that are using IOJS are the kind of people that were using 0.11, that's what we should be considering IOJS now. It's our chance to get releases out there that have the breakage that give people the opportunity to fix it. That's my concern now about fitting in the right window to get this LTS out in October. We really need to get Node converged out in August. So if we can get a 3.0 out for IOJS now, then that's our 0.11 to start giving people the opportunity to start upgrading before we push out a converged in late August.
Okay, so whether we're going to call it IOJS now or Node.js now or later or whenever, we have to start thinking about the messaging around this now and what we're putting out in the community now, and not think about it as IOJS messaging or Node.js messaging. Because if we put out a 3.0 of IOJS now, and then in a month the convergence happens and we call it Node.js, we're going to call it Node.js 3.2, but it's still not going to be usable because none of your native modules will work, right?
We call it Node.js 4.
So now we're going to do another major bump.
Yep.
Yeah, that was the plan all along.
Yeah, I don't think that works. Like, I mean, the next major bump is supposed to take 6 months. I mean, what? Like, we're going to bump the major just for. Hold on. So, are we going to bump the major just to call it Node.js? Is what you're saying?
No, and bring in the converge stuff. So there's actually a lot of stuff going into the converge repo that is not in IOJS. So that's what we're bumping major for.
Right. But why can't we land that in 3?
Hold on. Let's make this really easy. We'll land Rod's process.release thing where the name is IOJS, and then we'll have to break that to turn it to Node.js. And then all of our problems will be solved.
That's a bit sneaky.
So we just said though that we're going to land all of that converged code onto 3.
No, we didn't. You did.
Oh, I thought that's what James said.
Yeah, I mean, if we end up landing the converged equipment, because the changes themselves actually haven't proven to be as significant as first imagined. I mean, we have the INTL stuff, we have the possible, the cipher list stuff, and that's basically it. I mean, there's a few other minor things, but the changes aren't huge. If we landed those into 3, then yes, we could probably reconsider the requirement of having to do a major bump to do the converged release. We may be able to do that within the 3x timeframe. The question, though, comes if we have an IOJS 3, and then it's like IOJS 3.2, and then we do a Node 3.3. What happens to things like the IOJS binary in that? Like it was mentioned, that's part of the API. So we'd have to keep that around. There just gets to be some little bit of weirdness in there if we do a rename in the middle of the 3x stream.
And the other thing is, we're currently on NPM 2, and NPM 3 is kind of a breaking change. Like it's going to break for people, and I'm a bit concerned about it. Sorry.
It's definitely a breaking change.
Yeah, there's no kind of. It's definitely a breaking change.
In the past, we've had the policy of saying, oh, well, whatever, npm can change it, we'll just pull it in. But this one is not not that easy. So if having a node 4 would be a chance to pull that in.
So I'm just trying to understand this. What is the reason that you want to release 3.0 as stable now rather than releasing 3.0 alphas?
So that we get more
To
people
get-
using 3.0 because like it's very serious changes.
We need to put pressure on the native module ecosystem right now, so that when the converged release comes out, that's not the point where everyone says, "Oh, look, everything is broken." We want the converged release to at least have some lead time in updating stuff. So I want to treat 3.0 like we were treating 0.11. It's simply a we're seeding the ecosystem with builds that people can use.
So, okay, so a couple things about that. One is that if we called it Node.js 3.0 alpha, more people would use it than if we called it IOJS stable 3.0. So if the point, if the, yeah, I mean, if we're talking, I mean, if the reason to call it like if we're if we get a build out, people can technically use it, right? If you're talking about marketing to get more people using it, then the best way to get the most people to use it is to actually do the convergence on 3 and release it as Node.js 3.0.
No, how about this? We can do both. So how about we leave IOJS without the converge stuff, and start doing proper Node.js alphas off the converged repo, and then that actually also gives us the chance to fix our build system up. So we've got build system changes that need to come through for us to be able to release from there, like actually publishing to the Node.js.org site, and which we can't do properly from our current build system. So we can do both, and that way we get even better coverage. Those people who are using IOJS put pressure on, and anyone that wants to use these alphas can do it.
So doing both. So would that mean doing both an IOJS 3 release and a Node 3 release?
You mean 4.0 alphas? Because I think this makes sense for 4.0 alphas, but I'm not sure about like Node.js.
Why would it not make sense for 3?
Because they're not alphas of 3, because we know 3.
There is no 3. How is there no 3?
No node. There can't be a Node 3 if we're going to break like the binary name.
So there's no Node 3. There's IOJS 3, and there's going to be a Node 4.
Hold on. So hold on. Let's just unwind this a little bit. So one is that we don't want to step on version numbers. So if we're going to do an IOJS 3 and a Node.js 3 anything, when we version those, they need to basically be the same thing. Now this whole IOJS Node.js thing is kind of a red herring because like I don't see why we can't just install a node binary and then do a symlink from IOJS like we've been doing for the Node.js side anyway. Like, there's no reason not to. Then we don't break anything. So I think that's totally solvable without any other changes. Chris Dickinson just said Windows. Yes, but again, if we're moving to 3.0 alphas, then we can break stuff and we can introduce breaking changes into IOJS.
Michael, I feel like the waters are being extremely muddy here now. Can you back up and explain what you are trying to achieve here? What's the concern with the plan as it's proposed, which is getting a 3.0 of IOJS out now, and then getting a 4.0 of Node.js out in a month?
Because so first off, we're doing major bumps on a much faster schedule than we've talked about before.
No, we're doing it once. So what's the problem with doing it once for a special case?
One-time thing that's been in the plan from the beginning, Michael. I mean, we had the converge plan in there, we had this notion of the first converged Node.js IOJS would be one very major higher than whatever IOJS was at that time.
Well, also hold on. So as we're talking about this, are we still keeping them in separate repos, or are we like finally just on the same repo and the same branches now?
Separate repos.
The converged.
Oh God, can we just get into the same fucking repo?
But yeah, that's another.
4.0 will come from the Node.js/Node repo, yeah.
So if we do 3.0 right now and keep that named as IOJS, at the end of August, when we're ready to say, okay, we're converged, basically IOJS 3 merges into the converged repo under Node.js Node, right? We have all of our the commits there from the 0.12, and that becomes the stable.
Right. So we had a bunch of reasons for creating a different repo and not renaming before, especially because of the old release policy, and it was going to not be that big of a deal. Now I think that we're lining all up to all these things be landing in master and all the PRs and issues targeted there. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't just rename io.js to /node once the convergence happens and just target it at the same repo and not
Only
have
if you
to
can
run
guarantee that no links whatsoever will break from anything.
I mean, that's how that exists. I mean, did they break when we moved the org?
Well, it's any existing links to the existing Node.js-node would break.
One of the problems with
Oh yeah, but okay, yeah.
one of the problems with moving repos, and this is not obvious when you do it. Like the web stuff redirects nicely. None of the API stuff works. You can't do API queries on old metadata. It doesn't redirect, and that's annoying for tooling. And I've got a lot of tooling now that's doing API calls to look at issue metadata, and it doesn't work. So I'm fine with saying that, like, IOJS it's a piece of history, and we may want to revive it even some point. But it's a repo, and we want to start filing stuff against IOJS. We'll do what we're doing now with the Converge repo, and saying, well, this is not the correct place to file it. You should go over here.
Yeah. I mean, Michael, I definitely see what you're saying as far as messaging is concerned. Coming out with an IOJS 3, and not as many folks are going to use it unless we, until we actually call it Node, right? When Node 4, that first Converge release comes out, that's probably going to be picked up by a hell of a lot more people than an IOJS 3. But that's the process we've had. We defined from the very beginning of how we were going to do this, and have that one-time, very quick Semper major bump, and then from there the regular process takes over, and we won't be bumping it nearly as quickly. So I mean, I think it works.
In terms of like marketing, why can't we have like the website then, like the Node.js.org website, more clearly state and like just like spread the word better that like that 4.0 is going to be the next Node.js release for sure, and it's going to have whatever was in 0.12, but it's going to be based off of this IOJS 3, and if you're interested, you should be testing that because that's going to be Node.
Yeah, that's
that's not really super clearly messaged right now, except for like on the IOJS repo title.
When we're referring to it, we could call it IOJS 3 / Node.js 4 alpha. Like we could just call it that for the period of 3.
That won't be confusing at all. I definitely think that on the website we can do a much better job of describing this. It's something that I've kind of had on my to-do list, but I wanted to figure out where this discussion was going to go as far as the releases are concerned. I think we need to add something to the site that just talks about this is the short-term plan for getting the next LTS out. This is going to be the release process. These are the exact steps, and here's when to expect it to happen. We need to get that documented very clearly and on the Node.js.org website. It'd also be great if we can get that on the IOJS website, if that's not already pointing to Node.js.
So I have two concerns. I'm not going to have them block anything, but I do want to get them out there. One is that the convergence has already taken a lot longer than any of us thought originally, and all of our early timelines had us like already having it out. And one of the reasons that it got so delayed is because the way that we've been just getting all the IOJS releases out has been really problematic, and we've had all these problems with Next. So now we're fixing that, but we don't know for sure that this new release plan is going to work without a hitch. And my concern is that like now we're like the convergence stuff, because we've complicated it, because we have these parallel tracks going on, it's just going to get deferred even longer while we work out all of this new release plan stuff. So that's the first concern, and it feels like way more complicated that we're going to persist these two repos for even longer, right? The second is that like we are already credibly merged as a project in terms of governance, and if we're talking about things like how long we have an alpha out for you to download and for you to mess around with it and get the ecosystem up to date, and doing stable releases that people can actually reuse, we lose a lot of credibility continuing, even as IO.js, doing these releases that are major, that we point people at that they actually can't use, that nobody's updated their name modules on. So if we want this for stability for being called Node in the future, we should act like it now, even if we're just calling it IO.js.
Yeah.
Right? So I just don't see the argument here for calling 3.0 not an alpha release for the time being and calling it a stable release.
Okay.
Because we're not following the policies that we're trying to lay down for the future.
Here's the problem with that, and it's largely okay. There's two problems. First of all, we're not converged in the IOJS repo. There's a bit of work to do that. The converged work has been done in the Node repo, the new Node repo, and that is not. It's not a continuation of IOJS because it doesn't have the name. There's a whole lot of stuff that's different. We've been set up for having IOJS and converged Node. We're not set up for putting them into one thing. The other problem is that we don't have the build tooling in place. The plan that we've been following has been to do IOJS to the point where we start being able to get converged releases out. So I and others on the build team have not been focused on getting the build system ready to do releases from the converged node, from the converged repo.
Right.
And
so that's why I'm.
Wait, Michael. No, wait. So even if we wanted to start calling them node alphas, and even if we pulled them out of the IOJS repo, we can't do it because we're not set up to. We can't connect to the old the Node.js.org site with our new build system. So there's a lot of tooling in place that can't do it, and that would delay getting the converged release out because we're suddenly having to push 3.0 out.
So let me separate those two build issues, right? So one is that the build stuff isn't set up to be pointed at the other repo, and the other repo isn't set up on the build stuff. The other issue is the website. Okay, so I can work to get the website like in order and make that happen by the time that we're ready for this to go out, right?
No.
Hold on. Like I mean, a lot of
I
it
don't
is
even
that,
care
like,
about the website.
Right, exactly. So if the complication is that we have two repos, then why don't we just do the convergence without having two repos and converge on IOJS and do the rename?
Because you're going to be holding up 3.0. We can get 3.0.
No, we're not. We're doing
now.
alphas. Look,
we can get it out now. We can't even get alphas out. If you want to rebrand, do convergence with alphas, we can't get that out now. We're going to have to defer that for a few weeks while we get everything ready.
Hold on, Rod. Today, merge everything into master, do an IOJS 3.0 alpha 1, okay? When the convergence lands and when all the renames land, it's Node.js 3.0 alpha 29 or whatever the hell we're at, or however many releases that you want to do with master between now and then. So we're not holding any of the IOJS releases up for the convergence.
We can do exactly the same thing in the reverse. We can do the same thing with the current plan, which is we get IOJS 3 out, we start working on in parallel on getting the converged releases ready, like actually being able to push stuff out of there. We turn on a button to get nightlies out of there, and we start pushing alphas of 4.0 out of the converged release at the same time. They don't have to be released at the same time as anything we do on 3.0, but we start pushing code out. Even just one would be enough, and the 4.0 alpha. We can do that now.
Yeah, I mean, it really just comes down to, once 3.0 is out, we rebase or merge that back into the Node.js node, the converged repo. And then we land the INTL and cipherless changes and whatever else needs to happen there and cut the first node for release.
Alpha, whatever.
Or alpha.
Wait, hold on. Why don't we, is there a reason not to take all of the Intel stuff as a PR against IOJS 3.0 now?
Because we actually need it in IOJS due to other issues.
So I mean, like I said, these changes are not going to be huge. What's required for convergence is not going to be huge, and we can land some of those things in IOJS 3. But we don't need to just collapse everything down to one repo just yet. I see what you're saying, Michael, but I think we can still accomplish the same thing with the separate repo, and then once we do start cutting those releases off Node.js node, then we just push developers over there and point them there and say, go land things there instead. I do see what you're saying about wanting to do this, and I do agree that the sooner we can start calling it node, the better, as far as the community is concerned. I just don't think we need to change.
We could release by 3.0 of IOJS, and that's the only 3.0 we release of IOJS, and then we move straight away to doing alphas off Node, and that way we have the best of both worlds. We've got people who are using IOJS upgrading, and it's actually a legitimate version. We can tell people you should be comfortable using this. It's a proper version of Node, really. And if you don't like the brand, then fine, just wait, and then we'll start getting alphas out, or nightlies, or whatever we want to call them.
Not like they have to wait very long. So
yeah, and we start getting them out of the new repo in fairly short order once we've got the build stuff and the website stuff sorted out, and we have the best of both worlds. We have a stable version out there, 3.0. You can use that in your production now. It's fine, and then we start getting these alphas out of the Converge repo.
I disagree that we should only have one release of 3.0 because there's inevitably at least something that's going to break that we're going to need to patch.
I'm just pushing it to the extreme for the example. Like, we don't just pretend it's all perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, Okay, so this didn't address my concern about the actually following the process that we're trying to set up for the future while we're calling it IOJS. But Rod, so would it be just answer if it would be easier or more work if we, as we're preparing all of this work, if we land the Intel stuff into IOJS master, and then we can even land the rebranding. Like, as long as we still have an IOJS like accessible somewhere, I don't see why we can't. Like, nobody cares if they download a thing called IOJS and it has some Node branding on it. We can, like, and if we think about this as the last thing to do is change the build to sign differently, and the last thing that we do is change out the website, then we're not blocking all of this on getting everything lined up in this parallel repo that way fewer people are working on than IOJS. And then once the things land in master on IOJS, everybody's working on them and making them better and contributing.
Sure, you've just described the plan we've always really had. Because we've
Microsoft
already landed stuff from the
more in the
convergence.
IOJS repo.
Yeah, because now you don't have to set it up on this. I mean, maybe you're doing some work in the parallel repo just to get the PRs ready to master on IOJS, but you're not having to set up the build infrastructure on this separate thing. Well, all you're doing is, at some point you'll change the build infrastructure to call it Node.js after everything else has happened, and you'll change it to point it to their website after everything else is done.
So to be honest, I don't care like where all this stuff happens from. All I care about is getting a 3.0 out now so that we can start giving people time to adjust. And even I don't even really care what that's called. I want to get something out that is legitimate enough so that people who have objections to upgrading their native modules because it's called an alpha. I've had that, like, this happens a lot. And it happened in 0.11. People when we went out there with NAN and we started saying we need to use NAN, this new thing, and it's going to give you 0.12 compatibility. We went through on 0.11, and there was a large proportion of native add-on authors who would not touch a thing until 0.12's out. They'd say, "Oh, that's great, but I'm not going to do anything until 0.12's out because 0.11 is unstable." I want to have a thing out that we can say is stable, and IOJS is stable. People know that, and people have upgraded their native add-ons to match IOJS, even if they don't use it. And having a 3.0 makes that legitimate, and people will start upgrading. If we push it out and say, okay, the changes are coming in this alpha of Node, people are going to say, I'm going to hold off until the real thing comes out because this thing could change. There's this legitimacy problem. I just want to get that out now, and I want to have it legitimate.
I actually had a similar problem, but somewhat of the inverse, where when we put out 2.0, some native module authors were just saying, "Oh, I'm going to skip this one because I just got 1.0 IOJS working. I don't care enough. I'm just going to wait until you guys do a 3." So.
But in this case, the messaging is going to be, when you upgrade your native add-on to work with IOJS 3, it is going to be compatible with a Node 4.
Right.
This is the compatibility step, and it's effectively that alpha, like you're saying, and maybe we do need to work on the branding issue, the messaging issue around that. But that's what it is. It is an alpha for 4 in the native add-on sense, and that can be the way we push it. And what we will do. So there's a few of us in the NAN repo that we did this. We've done this a couple of times before. We go around the ecosystem looking for the most prominent add-ons. We already know what they are. And we will be putting pull requests into them. Like there's going to be like a week where we're going and updating everything, and part of that messaging will be, you should take this because this is going to give you version 4 compatibility.
I just had maybe the best, maybe the worst idea ever, which is that every release, every Semver release of IOJS 3, we could just call a Node.js 4.0 alpha and keep increasing the number.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea at all. I mean, it starts to message that we're heading in that direction, right? And likewise, when 4.0 comes out, the premise is that anything that's in IOJS 3 is going to just continue to work. Nothing's going to break when we go to 4.
Yeah, and it gets more people using it as well if we also say that it's a Node.js alpha. And if under the hood the branding still says IOJS, nobody gives a shit.
Well, we could actually do this in an automated way, which is we could add something to build system or maybe the step somewhere that takes whenever we cut an IOJS release off 3, it just runs stead and changes all of the IOJS to Node in a careful way, obviously, because it's not that easy, and push out an alpha with the same code to the Node.js.org website. So we could automate it.
Mm. I mean, I actually kind of like the idea that there's one binary, though, and we're calling it IOJS 3 dot something and Node.js 4.0 alpha whatever.
Yep.
It's literally the same thing.
That comes down to messaging, and that's what we need to tackle, and I'm trusting that that's going to be in someone else's hands.
Okay.
I don't want to have to think about messaging. I've got too much other stuff to do.
Okay. All right, cool.
Backing up to the original discussion. There was a question in chat here that Trevor wanted answered, but he had to go. Just wanted us to clarify that we're only going to be landing stable V8s in our master. Does everyone agree with that?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think that's all.
And do we imagine having the same pressure to do it every 6 weeks that we've had till now? That master will be having new V8 every 6 weeks.
Yes.
In master, landing that in master.
In master.
Yeah. I mean, well, it depends, right? So like we just had this big major bump, right? But then we knew that something else was coming down the pipe. So, like if I think that we are going to take them every 6 weeks in the beginning, and then towards the end, if there's other major changes, what we may do is like try to stabilize master to get it to the new stable before we take it. But I think that that's like a kind of case by case basis.
Yeah. So we shouldn't bake it into a policy that we will be pushing every 6 weeks. We need to be. And this takes messaging as well, because there's a portion of the community that just can't wait for the latest stuff, and they're always pushing, saying you need to get next out because it's got fat arrows and because it's got this and whatever. We need to be able to say, well, no, that's not necessarily the case. We don't necessarily have to take the newest thing right now.
So that's true, but I think that if you think about it in a 6-month cycle, right? Like they're going to be really stoked about all the early releases, and we're going to be taking it often. And then towards the end, when we're stabilizing, that same community is saying, "Hey, why isn't this in the current release yet? Why can't my boss use this?" So we'll get from that community a kind of reverse pressure to get out what's there into a stable release. So I think that'll work itself out.
So the thing is, I think we should usually aim to pull them in as soon as possible. Just at the end. We should have it so when we're going to release a stable, that we delay on updating that particular that particular V8 if it's if the cycle for it just started. So if it was like less than halfway through that cycle or whatever V8 cycle, so we have like at least a couple weeks buffer that we have to work with or whatever. So somewhere there, so that one might get delayed a bit just because we need some amount of time to make sure we don't screw over everything by just having merged a new version of V8, which we'll probably know anyway because we'll probably have some sort of testing branch still set up on this, or someone will. They'll be like master plus next V8 plus or whatever. So
master plus one. Yeah, no, I agree, and also I think I don't think anywhere we've actually said. That we're going to be strict about release time. Like we haven't said that 6-month releases will be exactly 6 months. So, and even the LTS stuff we've said October, but we haven't given dates.
Yeah.
So as we come up to these things, we can say this will be the date. but we don't have to pre-commit to being exactly on time.
I think we
can
just need to
adjust-
put
we can adjust.
we just need to put a tilde in front of whatever number that we use, right? So 6-ish months, whatever seems to make sense, right?
Yeah.
Also, like if V8 stops breaking their ABI all the time, we may start taking these more often in stable releases anyway, right? So if that ever happens sometime in the future. Okay, anyway, I think we're good. I think we're ready to move forward.
Yeah.
So, Rod, could we go, when we go off air, could you stay on for a minute? I got to talk to you about some stuff for the board meeting.
Sure. And I've asked for that for a CC version of that chart. That's happening. We'll get that out so that it's not copyrighted.
Cool.
Right. I was attempting to take notes. I missed some. Does somebody have a little more detailed notes that they can send out?
No, but this is recorded if you really want to watch it again.
Oh, okay.
So James, you're really good at writing these plans and policies up. Would you mind?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. Is just going to go back and make sure I hadn't missed anything. So, give me probably until Tuesday next week, and then I will write everything up.
Great.
Okay.
Any more discussion points before we close out?
No, that'd be it. Just if you would, once you have this online recorded, if you have the URL, just send it to me so I don't lose track of it.
It's in the issue. There's a YouTube link in the original post.
Take a look. Okay. I'm good.
Thanks, everyone.
Later on.
Constructive Bikeshed.
Yeah.